Good morning. Again, sorry. I'm Ramu Damodaran. I'm the head of the United Nations Academic Impact, which is an initiative which Secretary General Ban Ki-moon launched about almost 2.5 years ago, November 2010, which brings universities and students around the world together in a collective effort to help resolve some of the problems and issues with which the United Nations is faced. This is my first time in this hall, and I'm so glad that it's been an auspicious occasion like the World Youth Assembly. This is my first experience behind this podium, and I should tell you in full disclosure that there's a platform about 18 inches high here, so I'm less tall than I appear. And this is obviously one of the feats of innovation that we've done in this new building here. This panel and the entire morning that we've had before us, I think is really reflective, if I could use one word, reflective of movements, of how people can come together and create a movement, create what sometimes is called an energy and enthusiasm. And obviously the most evident movement which I would like to make reference to is the Friendship Ambassadors Foundation. Patrick has been its executive director now for 20 years, in the year 1993, and the results of his efforts, the result of his team's efforts, has been this assembly that you see here today, and your participation as you come to your United Nations. And I was thrilled to see that goal achieved in one of the slides, the fact that we have the World Youth Assembly here. Another movement really is the movement of the United Nations working with the world's youth. And this had been done at various elements in the past, in sectoral senses, also in the sense of youth representatives to the General Assembly. But it is for the first time that the leader of the United Nations, in this case Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, took it upon himself to pose a very fundamental question. Should he have a representative who can reach out to the youth of the world and who in turn can have the youth of the world reach out to him? And so the idea of the Secretary General's Envoy on Youth was born, reflective of this common movement of an organization of 193 member states and the youth of the world, many of whom are assembled here today. And that first envoy, as you know, was Ahmad Alhendawi. I think you've already met him, and we're looking forward to hearing him in this panel. The other movement is that of the movement towards the Millennium Development Goals. And this, again, is a movement which has many composite factors to it. There's the movement of nation states, governments who brought the goals into being. There's the movement of civil society, non-governmental organizations, faith-based organizations, people who are active in secular professions like medicine, public health, engineering, architecture, who come up with innovations, universities, the area with which I deal and have every day been interested and reinterested by. And through universities, the idea of students on campuses working towards this goal. And suddenly, a few years ago, this new movement, the Millennium Campus Network, began, led by Sam Bena, whom you just heard. And when he shared with you his advice and his vision, it was obviously born not only of what he believes is possible for the world today, but more importantly, what is possible for all of us collectively and individually to achieve. In other words, always look behind you, but do not be afraid of what is behind you. And then another movement, the movement of the global corporate sector, which moves away from what we normally consider the impulse of corporations everywhere, to maximize profit, certainly to deliver goods that consumers and people at large want, but to do so in a manner which really makes it clear that that entity, that corporation, can remain profitable. And the movement to incorporate into this profitability an element of conscience, realizing that you can make profit and yet be a sustainable entity while allowing the earth or the planet upon which you work to be sustainable itself. And that movement is really represented in one of the world's most familiar, largest corporations, PepsiCo, having dedicated an entire sector to global sustainable development, and we're privileged to have its leader, Bena, with us today to talk about that perspective. And then a movement of creating a global culture of peace, where peace is not seen merely as a political or strategic or even developmental imperative, but is something like all culture which touches our hearts, our lives, our minds, our passions, the way we live, the way we reach out to each other. That global movement of culture for peace was spearheaded by one of the most distinguished delegates that the United Nations has known, one of the most distinguished civil servants the United Nations has been privileged to have on its staff, and today, one of the most distinguished civil society activists in our world, Ambassador Anwarul, who heads the global movement for the culture of peace. So you have this remarkable quartet here to talk about youth leadership and global development. And I would just like to launch this panel by sharing with you one thought. A few weeks ago, an expert panel set up by Secretary Ban Ki-moon had a look at what the world could be like 17 years from now, in the year 2030. What would that world be like if all of us, the 193 member states of the United Nations, global civil society and young minds like you, work together in a sense which, while protecting their own interests, while being self-interested and self-centered, was not going to be selfish. And it came up with a projection, and Sam spoke about the 1.2 billion a little while ago, came up with this projection of a world in 2030, where 1.2 billion fewer people would be living in absolute poverty, where 1 billion fewer children would be in danger of deadly disease before their 5th birthday, where 4.5 million more women would be likely to survive childbirth than they do now, where 1.3 billion tons of food, less than today, would go to waste, where 1.2 billion more people than today would have access to electricity, where 470 million more people the world over would have gainful employment and livelihood, and where 200 million more young people like yourselves would be equipped with the education and skills necessary to have that livelihood. This is the world that this panel foresaw. This is the world they believe is possible. And if I have one concluding remark, it will be to make that possible in the year 2030, you need the minds, the talents, the skills, and the abilities of those who are in their most productive years between now and 2030. And that means, in one single word, you. Thank you for being with us, and now let's launch the panel. I'd like to begin by asking Ahmad to introduce the agenda of what youth leadership can do for global development.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ramu. I mean, I'm very well aware that you are one of the best moderators ever, and I'm glad to be in a panel with you as well, with all the distinguished speakers. Thank you very much for the introduction. I am a frequent flyer, by the way, to this assembly. This is my number 6 assembly, maybe. I started coming here in 2007, and I'm a big believer that in the UN, you should meet, and the youth should work with the United Nations. For me, the United Nations, again, I've said it so many times so far, it's called United Nations because it's mandated to unite nations. To unite nations based in peace, democracy, human rights, dignity, and also for development. This is why it's called United Nations. It's a place, a venue where people from all over the world can come and meet and discuss and try to set the global norms for development and to make the world we want, not a wish, but a reality. It doesn't always work as this, huh? So many challenges. Sometimes it doesn't work like a magic as we wanted. But this is the best thing we have got so far to make it work. Usually we talk about universal values. We take it for granted. Democracy, human rights. Do you know when was the first man or woman, the first human being on this planet? The first presence for human beings in this planet? Anyone has a clue? How many years ago? Thousands, millions? Say it. Quiz.
We'll wait for them.
Okay. You know, for many thousands of years, human beings were on this planet. Only in the last 5 or 6 decades, we have something called universal values. Don't underestimate this. This building where you are now is the manifestation and representation for the protection of these universal values and the promotion of these universal values. We didn't land and come here easily. It was a long struggle with so many wars, so many conflicts, a lot of stereotypes, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of conflicts behind that. But people realize after some bloody wars that, enough is enough, and we should sit and meet. We find the place, a table, where we disagree, but we disagree in a table, not with tanks. Again, it doesn't always work like this. But this is the best we have got so far. This place maintains security and peace globally, but also promote human rights and set norms for how the world should be, and to make sure that the world should be a reality, the world that young people want. Some people ask, why policies? Policies are not important. Why we even debate policy? Let's just get to action. Well, I'll tell you, if you drive your car in Tokyo and you find the red light, what does it mean? You stop. If you drive it in Nicaragua, what it means, So you stop. Did it happen by coincidence, or it was a policy behind this? There are so many things that we take it for granted, started here. It was debated here, and this is as simple as that. You drive your car, you eat, you go to a restaurant. We take so many signs and things. We dial number. I am from Jordan. I start calling Jordan with 962. I take it for granted. But it wasn't this. It was agreed on in some of the meetings here in the United Nations. We set policy to make the life easier. This is why the United Nations is important. Now, the world is challenged with so many great challenges. I am the youth envoy. Yesterday I said it, for 1.2 billion. And from where I come from, in the Arab culture, we define envoy as messenger. And to be the messenger means that you carry a message from to. And to be the messenger, in my case, means to be the messenger for the United Nations to young people around the world, to bring the UN closer to young people. But it's a two-way communication. It's not only from the UN. We need young people to come and influence the UN as well. It's a question of legitimacy in our world today. If you don't engage 1.2, and if we start count from 10, it's 1.8 billion. It's a must. It's not a luxurious option anymore. It's a must. We have seen what happened so many streets around the world. When young people, they have taken the streets, protesting and demanding for jobs, education, and also for being recognized as partners in decision-making. We have seen so many protests around the world, and we know very well now that an honest and responsive government is one of the top demands for young people around the world. They want to be recognized, and they want to participate. I like President Lula da Silva, the former president of Brazil, what he wrote in the New York Times 2 weeks ago. He said, democracy is not a contract for silence. Voting every 4 years does not mean democracy anymore. Democracy in the 21st century means direct engagement and interaction with people. Now, any story in social media means that you will like, comment, share, you share your views. You want to do the same thing with governments. Governments, they need to engage citizens in everything. We can't wait only for 4 years. Elections are important, and democracy, as we understand it now, should evolve to include direct engagement and interaction with people. Again, I don't want to make another speech. There will be brilliant speeches in this 2-3 days. I want to share some news with you. A news from the United Nations for you, for youth. One of these news is that the UNs now, leading in global momentum for youth development. In the second term, for Mr. Ban Ki-moon as the Secretary General of the United Nations, he has made working with and for young people as one of his top priorities. He made 3 concrete initiatives to do that. The first, for the first time ever, the United Nations now has one joint strategy, common strategy for the UN and youth development, bringing all UN agencies, from ILO, WHO, UNICEF, UNDP, UNFPA, UN Habitat, all these agencies coming together and more in one coordinated plan to work in youth issues. This is a big achievement because the UN, when it delivers as one, it can do an amazing job. In 1995, we have something called World Program for Action for Youth. Nobody before that date ever discussed something called National Youth Policy. Now more than 90 countries around the world, they have national youth policies. Of course, we want more. But this is another proof for when the UN works, what it can do, how it can influence policies at the national level. We need to do more. And now the UN, all agencies coming together to do that together. We have something called Interagency Network in Youth Development, bringing all responsible youth programs in all agencies together. Young people were consulted in building this common strategy for the UN and youth. But that's not enough. We want young people to come with us for the implementation. That's why we have a meeting this September, bringing the Interagency Network, all agencies together, and representative for young people. We have launched a call for applications and for participation. You can all join, not all maybe, but you can apply at least, and the most representative groups can come. And we are sure that the selection process will be very transparent and make sure whomever will come will be in a good shape to represent larger constituency. You can go to, I use this as well to announce my Facebook account, the official page, UN Secretary General's Envoy in Youth, to learn more about this call, and you can, of course, apply through the link we provided at that link. Another news is the UN Volunteer Program is one of the leading agencies in the UN to provide venues for people to work with the United Nations. In the second term of Mr. Ban Ki-moon, he made a task, UN Volunteer Program, to establish a new youth modality, allowing young people starting from 18 years old to volunteer with the United Nations. It's called the Youth Modality for UNV. You can visit the UN Volunteer website and learn more about it. And the third was appointing me as his envoy in youth, and with that, I am tasked to bring your voice to the United Nations. But you need to help me, so we can change things here. The UN wants you. And basically, we cannot enter the future in the 21st century and make the organization up to the challenges of the 21st century without the innovation of young people. We are promoting several mechanisms for youth participation, starting from the national level by having youth advisory boards at the national level for the UN country teams. I'm confident that only by promoting more mechanisms for your participation in the UN, we will be able to change things. But at least today, you have the commitment from the United Nations, presented by the Secretary General and by all senior officials from the United Nations, the commitment to work with you. We need to work with you. And in fact, we have to work now just to address all these challenges that we are facing together, but also to build over the assets we have. Many news can come. I really encourage you all to follow us on Twitter at Alhendawi and also on the Facebook account, and also wait our website that will be live end of this month, a one-stop shop. With one website, you will be able to get news about all youth-related news in all agencies in the UN system. We're trying to make the UN more accessible and more readable and a bit funkier as well for you. Thank you very much.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you. I'm glad that you didn't ask what happened to you see a red light in India, because there is something to the UN policy. Thank you. Your reference to universal values, it struck a chord because at one level, we talk about these values as universal, and sometimes the word universal might seem a little remote. So how do we bring that universal to the lives we lead, to the passions that animate us, and to what we want to do? And I was very struck when I read the commencement address that Sam delivered a couple of months ago at Lynn University. He was the youngest commencement speaker to be invited by that university. And he made a reference to activism. And he spoke of activism as something which is not only intensely personal, but is actually an expression of love. And love is unfortunately not a word we hear very often in the United Nations. People are a little wary or coy or shy of using that word. I'm glad that that word has come into the vocabulary of this institution. So turn to Sam and get from him the sense of how he, in his life and through the Millennium Campus Network, is able to bring this sense of universal values to the actual day-to-day work and lives and loves of those on campus. Sam?
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? A little bit now, yeah? In the interest of time, Ramu, in the interest of time, I know you already heard me speak. So we have two fantastic panelists over here. I want to give them their due. I will give you my personal email address, which is samvaghar, Vaghar, @gmail.com. I encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Millennium Campus Network. Find me on Facebook. One quick idea. Our Twitter handle is @MCN Partners. The first 5 of you to tweet there, we will give you each a pair of tickets to our November conference, just because I love you all that much. But with that, I'll save the rest for later. So thank you.
I have a feeling that we will compensate for your brevity now in the interactive session. Thank you very much. Now, the idea of campuses taking part in the social movement, as I said, has also been something relatively new. We've had the great campus protests of the late 60s, the anti-war protests and so on. But the idea of the campus being a source of creative energy and ideas. In my own country, India, I was struck to read a few months ago that in a part of the state of Gujarat, which is where Mahatma Gandhi came from, I'm sure you're all familiar with his name, there's a district called Mehsana. And this is a district which has a chronic water shortage. One of the more enterprising industries in India, PepsiCo, decided to set up a plant there. And then it realized that by setting up this plant, it could not only bring profit and sell products to the consumer, but could also address 3 issues: water security, food security, and climate security, if they could get with them the wisdom of a specific campus. And so they teamed up with the Columbia Water Institute. And at Mehsana, you have this tremendous effort going on between a large entrepreneurial firm like PepsiCo, Columbia University in the United States, and the citizens and the people who breathe life into Mehsana. And that is a sort of partnership I think that Bena and PepsiCo represent, and it's been a privilege to be able to do so.
Thank you so much. I'd like to say that I'm standing at the podium just to sort of buck the trend that has started already, but the truth is, I told my sisters and my wife and my family that I was going to be speaking here. It's really cool to have the UN logo behind you, so I wanted that to officially represent this somewhere on film. I love PowerPoint presentations. I'm from a large corporation, PepsiCo. I'm going to have very few slides because I'm actually going to use some short videos to show the voices of our key partners and some of the things that they're doing to enable youth leadership. So we're going to have the first slide. I have to first talk a bit about PepsiCo. Here we go. And one more. So PepsiCo, this is just not to bore you with some of these factoids, but I think one of the most important things that you'll see on this slide is the one that talks about scale. So we serve consumers in over 200 countries and territories And I was thrilled to hear Sam mention Professor Jeffrey Sachs this morning, because it was Professor Sachs who brought the magnitude of serving consumers in over 200 countries to my consciousness 6 or 7 years ago. When I met with him, and we were going through many of the projects that we were doing across PepsiCo, and he sort of sat back and stroked his chin as only he can do very pensively. And you know that words of wisdom are going to come out of his mouth as soon as he opens his lips. And he said, "How many countries does PepsiCo operate in?" And at that point, I really didn't know. I said, you know, I know what our corporate communications people tell us, over 200 countries and territories. And he said, "You realize that's more than the United Nations has members." And at that point, you know, it didn't quite click with me until he said, "You need to treat PepsiCo like a miniature United Nations in terms of the reach and influence and obligations that it has as a company the size of the company that we are." And that was an epiphany for me, because ever since then he said, you need to go from a collection of really good projects to a collection of earth-changing projects. And that's what we're trying to do through our partnerships. The next slide, please. Everything that we do at PepsiCo related to sustainable development is embodied in what we're calling performance with purpose. It is a term that was coined by our current chair and CEO, Indra Nooyi. She believes firmly that companies can and must return value to their shareholders. However, they can and must also provide benefits to the planet and to society, and that's performance with purpose. The next slide, please. And then once again, I gave some thought to the content of this panel, and in particular, elements of leadership, elements of youth leadership that were so critical as we kind of tackle the development challenges ahead of us over the next 20 or 30 or 100 years. And what you see on the slide is what I came up with. Vision, absolutely important. It drives everything. You need to know how to balance the short and the long term. Many of the crises of the magnitude which we face now cannot be solved in the short term. They cannot be solved in a quarter, which is what much of the investment community wants us to believe. We need long-term strategies, and we need to balance that with short-term impacts. Passion. One of the things that I look for whenever we hire someone, less important about the school they went to, less important about the degree that they have. What's important is that they're passionate about something, about anything, but most importantly, that they can communicate that passion in an articulate and a compelling way. There's nothing more frustrating than having a passion about something and not being able to communicate it, because you sit there and say, why aren't these people understanding why this is the most important thing in the universe? Because it is to you. If you can communicate that in a compelling way, that's when you start to have impact. Knowledge, for God's sake, knowledge is one of the most important things you can possibly have. Everything is founded upon knowledge. One of my favorite quotes you see on the slide here, be confident, not certain. What does that mean? So many people today, young and old alike, are certain. They are certain that the decisions that they make, that the opinions they have, are the one and only way to go. Nothing is that simple. Nothing is black and white. Yes, confidence is good. Certainty often is not. So I challenge you to be confident, not certain. And then finally, innovation. We heard innovation mentioned a couple of times already. That is the key to success, whether it is innovation in technology, innovation in policy vehicles, innovation in academic approaches, innovation in all of the above and more. That is what will hold the key to the development challenges that we face. And one of the first short videos that I have to show you is about innovation. It's from a partner called the Spirit of Innovation Challenge through the Conrad Foundation. And it's a way to engage high school students from across the world to come up with innovative solutions to the most difficult challenges that we face. Video, please.
See, the world needs creative thinkers determined to make a difference. The Conrad Foundation believes that students have the potential to create the next game-changing, commercially viable product or service to support global sustainability and benefit humanity. Our launchpad to success, the Spirit of Innovation Challenge, a multi-phase business and technical plan competition open to students ages 13 to 18 worldwide.
This is far beyond a science fair. This is really what innovation is about. It's about identifying a problem, coming up with a solution, and understanding what the path to commercialization is.
Our idea is a device called Magnetech.
We invented the sleep halo.
My device is an add-on that can be added to any existing prosthetic that will help them get a better feel for what they're touching.
The first day they come up, they're still in their shells. They still feel like they're that lone wolf. But when they come out and they start slowly interacting, they're coming out of their shell, they're dancing, they're getting on stage.
They have learned how to connect, to create, to collaborate. And more than that, they've been exposed to a range of issues and problems, and they're far, far more knowledgeable.
To make my own product with my friends and to actually bring it this far, that's something you dream about when you're a little kid.
You have students that are artistic, you have students that can talk, you have students that love the science and math and the marketing part, and you put them together and something magical occurs.
It's very easy to grow up and imagine that you can't make a difference in the world. And we need to break through that. We need students to understand you can make a difference. And the best way to do that is to work on projects that exceed your own expectations.
What we're doing is stuff that people don't even do till after they get out of college, after they have years of experience.
We can create this innovation generation that will design their future.
For more information about how you can participate or how you can support the Spirit of Innovation Challenge, visit www.conradawards.org.
One of the winners of the Conrad Spirit of Innovation Challenge 2 years ago actually was lucky enough to go to Rio Plus 20. And they got so much momentum about this water treatment systems technology that they devised. It is now deployed to clinics throughout Haiti and is providing those clinics with safe water for the patients in those clinics. After each of the videos, I have just some words of wisdom that I extracted from the videos themselves. And you can see here, connect, create, collaborate. That's absolutely key. You can make a difference. Work on projects that exceed your own expectations. If you don't challenge yourself, why would you expect others to challenge you? You are your own best critic in many ways. And then finally, identify a problem, come up with a solution, and understand the path to commercialization. There are hundreds, thousands, millions of great ideas from people across the world that go absolutely nowhere, despite being great ideas, because they don't know how to get them into action. They don't know how to commercialize. So with that, I'd like to share the next slide, which is a program that our business has run in Latin America, across multiple countries in Latin America, in combination with the Organization of American States and the Young America's Business Trust, and it's called the Eco Challenge. It too challenges youth in schools across Latin America to come up with solutions to environmental challenges. It has been remarkably successful, and on the next slide, you can see just how successful. The first year, you can see the number of registrants, and then in 2013, over 1,400 registrants are now ready for the Eco Challenge in Latin America. And when we talk about commercialization, what's particularly exciting for us is we're going to the next phase of the Eco Challenge, and it's called Eco Innovator, Eco Entrepreneur. Next week in Washington, D.C., we will host the first ever Eco Entrepreneur Symposium, where the winners from the Eco Challenge are taken under the wing of people from the Skoll Entrepreneurship Facility, from PepsiCo, from our Latin America business, from other businesses, to learn how to take their great ideas from an idea to action. Go to the next slide, please. Okay. So why do we're going to, in the honor of time. That was about a program called 1 Liter of Life we started in the Philippines. And it actually is a way to use recycled Pepsi bottles, fill them with water and a little bit of bleach, put them into holes in roofs in these difficult homes in the emerging world, and it can actually reflect and refract the sun's light and give light to people that live within those homes. But back to the slide of leadership elements. The one thing I left out, which I hope many of you realized I left out, if you click again, is the thing that really underpins all of this. One more click, please. It's values and conscience. So all of the elements of leadership that you see on the slide have to be underpinned and have to be driven by conscience, by values, whether you're a company, whether you're an individual, whether you're a government. And as an example of conscience, as an example of attention to human rights across the world, and as an example of an innovative way to make human rights fun for youth, which is no small task, I share with you when I close with one more video, which is from an organization called the Creative Visions Foundation, which I'm honored to serve on the board. It is all about engaging youth and making you agents of positive social change. It's creating creative activists. And this paramount program that they have is called Rock Your World, which is all about engaging students in school in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, making it fun, inspiring a passion in them, and then giving them the tools to act and to do. Video, please.
Rock Your World is basically giving the students an opportunity to give back to the community and to teach others in their own childlike language how to be better people in the world and how they can actually just give back.
Rock Your World is a curriculum that guides young people through the International Declaration of Human Rights, has them choose the issues that matter most to them, and then they launch real media and art campaigns around those issues so that they can create real change in the world.
You guys, if you don't realize it now, are activists. You guys are activists because you can change things.
They're aware of the whole social movement, the 1%, all those different things, and just trying to figure out, like, how does this involve me? How does it affect my life? And if you don't really know what's going on in your world, you really don't have a voice. And sometimes you don't realize how big your voice can be at a young age.
They can just be activists, they can be givers, they can be anything that they want to be, not just mathematicians, not just scientists, not just artists. We want our students to be well-rounded individuals, so we think that this is very important for our kids to have this in their curriculum.
We started talking about energy, and the lights were on, and they turned off the lights because they're like, we don't need the lights right now, it's bright enough in here. And to me, I was like, oh, it's clicking. They understand that for every problem, there's a solution. You could fix something right away. It's up to you to figure out what it is on your own. If you could figure it out, do it.
It's the coolest, most energetic, exciting way to get kids involved in telling stories that need to be told about problems that need to be solved, both locally and globally.
The Creative Visions Foundation launched Rock Your World because we believe that young people today have the power to change the world like never before. Rock Your World is their tool to become creative activists.
Always on our way, we're on our way. Oh, we're always on our way, we're on our way.
Inform the remainder and create the air for the rest of the Youth Assembly, which is young people today have the power like never before to change the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben, for that bridge, if you will, between the values which Ahmad and Sam referred to conscience, which I think is going to really lead to Ambassador Chowdhury's presentation. I mentioned Sam's commencement address, and the one other point that struck me was his reference to the constant theme in commencement addresses saying you're going out into the real world, as if the world that you're already inhabiting in college and university in some way is unreal. And it was the same sense that I felt some years ago when I was privileged to hear Ambassador Chowdhury, who dismissed all this talk of future generations, saying, why are we talking about future generations? This is the present generation, and this is where the action lies. And it's a generation which I think, as the immediately preceding video showed us, is passionate about change and activism, but is also passionate in the idea of a steadfast commencement and commitment to peace. And that is what really animates the culture of peace. Ambassador Chowdhury will share his thoughts on that with us.
Greetings to all of you. Thank you, Ramu, for the introduction. Ramu leads a wonderful initiative that he mentioned, Academic Impact. I think on the quiet, he is bringing in a tremendous change in the way this organization works, articulating relationship with the educational institutions. Wonderful, Ramu. Today, as we gather at the United Nations headquarters for the 12th Youth Assembly on the eve of the International Youth Day on 12th of August, it is a special honor and encouragement for me to present these remarks to the young people who are an active and responsible part of the economic, social, and cultural forces that contribute to the progress of humanity. You are encountering a world that is full of new hopes, but also one that is filled with injustice, inequity, and discrimination. This, in a big way, is inherent in the paradox that we perceive in the level of development reached by the modern world. On one hand, through the process of globalization, an irreversible trend towards a global village has been established, while on the other, divisions and distrust have increased. We are living in years when people fear deadly attacks by terrorists, tormented by genocides, or suffer massive violations of human rights carried out on many occasions by the authorities and people in power themselves. We must not forget that it is not only morally unsupportable, but also practically unrealistic to achieve sustainable peace without addressing squarely the crushing problems of poverty and insecurity, and human insecurity. There will be no development without peace, and no peace without development. History tells us that differences often trigger conflict. I, however, believe differences is not a threat. It should be perceived as ever-energizing diversity that has fueled human progress from ages. In today's world, more so, it should be seen as the essence of a new humanity, a new global civilization based on inner oneness and outer diversity. We have to keep striving with all of our intellectual and spiritual energy and determination for a better world based on principles of freedom, justice, democracy, tolerance, solidarity, respect for diversity, dialogue, and understanding. And there is no doubt that the most effective way to make a difference, to bring a change, is to build the culture of peace, building on trust and collaboration among individuals, within the family, in larger communities, in our societies, and at the same time also at global levels. The flourishing of the culture of peace will generate the mindset in us that is a prerequisite for the transition from force to reason, from conflict and violence to dialogue and peace. The adoption in 1999 by the UN General Assembly of the Declaration and Program of Action on Culture of Peace was a watershed event. It was an honor for me to chair the 9-month-long negotiations that led to the adoption of this historic norm-setting document that is considered as one of the most significant legacies of the United Nations. The International Decade for Culture of Peace and Nonviolence for the Children of the World, which was proclaimed by the United Nations and concluded in 2010, has galvanized a global movement for the culture of peace. That has asserted forcefully that the culture of peace should be the foundation of the new global society. To achieve that objective, we must build a grand alliance for the culture of peace amongst all, particularly with the proactive involvement and participation of young people like you. Recognition of the human right to peace is at the core of such efforts. This is the first priority as we look ahead. A key ingredient in building culture of peace is education. Peace education needs to be accepted in all parts of the world, in all societies and countries, as an essential element in creating the culture of peace. To meet effectively the challenges posed by the present complexity of our time, the young of today deserves a radically different education, one that does not glorify war, but educates for peace, nonviolence, and global cooperation. They need the skills and knowledge to create and nurture peace for their individual selves as well as for the world they belong to. Peace studies should be incorporated in all educational institutions as part of their curricula and should become an essential part of our educational processes as reading and writing. Young people like you should mobilize support in your own spheres of activities for peace education. You should remember that peace education does not simply mean learning about conflicts and how to resolve them peacefully. It should also involve participation of young people in expressing their own ideas and cooperating with each other in order to eliminate violence in our societies. In its essence, peace education encourages reflection, critical thinking, cooperation, and rational, responsible action. Before I conclude, I would ask you to look into yourselves. With all your faults as well as the many, many strengths, some not even fully realized by you. I am convinced that only if we are able to see and accept our own weaknesses and inadequacies, we will be in a position to understand and appreciate our fellow women and men better. This will bring good and enduring results. That, I believe, is the first step towards building the culture of peace. Let us remember that the work for peace is a continuous process. Each of us can make a difference in that process. This is especially true of young people like you. You should take the initiative in your own hands without waiting for the others to tell you what to do. Listen to the voice inside of you. Your personal actions, your cooperative efforts will lay the foundations of the world where the culture of peace is the core of humanity's essential faith. Thank you.
say, the idea of performance with purpose, in a sense. Now that we've come to the end of the panel, I realize that we've really overshot the time period a lot from this, and in the interest of not bridging your time to be together and socialize over lunch, maybe we could take a couple of questions, and then I would like to ask the panel to respond to the questions that you have and make the closing remarks. So, anything from the floor? Any ideas, questions, comments? Please, just put on the mic, sir. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah.
I have a question for Mr. The question is, so you're representing your company, which is PepsiCo, and I want to know that, so how is Pepsi differentiate its environmental effort to other private companies, such as Coca-Cola? How are your company's effort differentiated?
If I may, so we'll just take a couple more and then you could respond. Thank you so much, sir. Any other? Please, just put on the mic, please. Thanks.
Is it working? Okay. Okay, so by showing people that people always think about when giving back to communities, they always think about charities, and so they have a hard time like joining charities and participating in them because they either don't have the time or they don't see a lot of rewards. So by showing how entrepreneurship can actually, as well can encourage giving back, do you think that can actually encourage more and more youth to start participating, to start helping to give back to the community?
Thank you. And one last question, if I may.
Woman. Take two.
There's a lady, please. I'm so sorry. I was like mine. Please.
Hello. I was just wondering if you could maybe describe some of the challenges that you faced in just achieving the different goals that you set out for yourself, and also any advice you would give to any of us who are, have ventures in mind or different goals that we'd like to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you. And was there another lady on that side? Yes, please. So we have a fair balance there, please.
Thank you. My question is for the Special Envoy in Youth and Mr. Sam Vaghar. The question is, well, there's been heavy emphasis on social media, hashtagging on Twitter, etc. But although that builds awareness, how do we get the youth to feel the passion that we all share to feel?
Thank you, and thank you for extremely succinct questions. Maybe we'll begin, Ambassador, would you like to respond to any of these points? Then we'll work down through Dan, Sam, and
Well, I believe that the very important thing that I think all of us mentioned in our speeches is to empower yourself with the spirit of the United Nations. That is very important. I always carry with me 4 booklets, always. One is the Charter of the United Nations, which is the foundational document. Second is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is absolutely essential for all of you to read. It is a simple document. The third is a very key document. It is the Convention on Discrimination, Ending of Discrimination Against Women. This relates to 50% of the world population. It is very important to get that 50% engaged in working together. Together and equally, with equality, is very important. So that is, and then the fourth one I showed you, the program of action on the culture of peace adopted by UN. So this is my message to the young people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dan?
Sure, just as you've heard, it's difficult for me to be brief, but I'll do my best. To the gentleman in the front row, very, very quickly, PepsiCo, as compared to Coca-Cola, is a different company, largely because about 50% of our business comes from foods and about 50% from beverages, as opposed to our major competitor, which is all beverages. What that allows us to do, particularly in the environmental space, is get involved in sustainable agriculture. Because if you can get involved in sustainable agriculture and make a difference, consider that agro represents about 70% of global water use, 90% in the emerging markets, represents 40% of worldwide employment, 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's the place where if you want to have an environmental impact, that's where you need to focus, and that's what PepsiCo is doing. That said, it's important to know that there are certain areas that we consider absolutely pre-competitive. And I work very frequently with Coca-Cola and with Nestle and with Unilever on things that are so important, like the water security crisis, the food security crisis, the climate security crisis. We work very closely and very frequently together on trying to advance collaborative solutions to those.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Sam?
Very briefly, to respond to 3 questions in one. In terms of how to fuel passion and engage young people, social media was mentioned. We found our sponsor, Microsoft, our partner, through Twitter. We did a big national social media day. They caught it on Twitter, and that's how we connected, and now they're a partner of ours. So social media has profound influence. Anyone who says otherwise is definitely misinformed. But what I would say is this. The most important advice I could give, aside from reaching out and having the courage to do that, is to have a theory of change and understand what you're driving towards, and be able to constantly reflect on whether you're meeting those outcomes. So there's this book, it's free online. It's free online. If you go to Leap of Reason, I believe it's leapofreason.org, and it talks about how to manage to outcomes. And I think one of the things that's key is partnership. I mean, all of us on this stage, everybody would agree, you're not going to create the change you want as a single organization. We have to work together. NGOs, private sector, government, entertainment industry, media, everybody has a role to play in this movement. So explore different ways, do an environmental scan, find others out there doing similar work, and find ways to connect.
Thank you, Sam.
Well, just by linking virtual to real, I would say. I mean, how to make sure that what happens, I mean, online doesn't stay online. But I mean, linking it to action on the ground. I have seen it firsthand. I mean, I was in Egypt during the the revolution, 2011, and seen what happened in social media and how it drove change in Egypt. I think whenever. That's, I mean, one case, but there's just we hear from Sam how it started virtual and it was eventually, I mean, linked to a real action. I think this is what we need. If you look to your action, I started using Facebook to complement my real life. Now I think my real life complement what happens in Facebook somehow. So I think we need to link that to development work. Thank you.
Thank you. I realize we probably missed one question, one on charity. In a few weeks, September the 5th, the United Nations will observe for the first time the International Day of Charity. It happens to be the death anniversary of Mother Teresa. So I thought I'd ask Patrick, who I know has worked with and worked with Mother Teresa, to reflect upon charity and what young people can do in response to that question, and as our closing remark. Patrick?
Hello, is this on? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Hi, everyone. And again, we, Friendship Ambassadors Foundation, was fortunate enough to work with Mother Teresa and with charitable efforts throughout the world. However, I want to take a very interesting approach to this very quickly, and that is that we all understand theoretically that we ought to be charitable. But many of us are not, because we don't have time, we just don't have the availability, and we just really have to worry about ourselves. That's why I have lived a life dealing with and investing all of my time in NGOs and charitable work, because, this is going to sound odd, because I'm very selfish, because that fulfills me. I don't really understand a life without charity. I have never been tempted to work in a large corporation because maybe I have a different feeling than other people. Most people who I meet believe that they are point A and the rest of the world is point B. You could probably relate to this, some of you. I came into this world thinking that I was point B and the rest of the world was point A. They were sort of the constant and I was the interloper. And therefore the only way that I could really exist on this planet was to exist in a world of charity. So it is fulfilling to me to be charitable, and I hope it is fulfilling to all of you who I serve and the many other people who we've served in the many years that we have existed here. And I ask you as a challenge to rethink the paradigm that you are the center of the world and understand that the world is the center and you are coming to it. It makes charity inevitable. And I certainly hope that resonates with you. I thank our panel so much and Ramu Damodaran for being with us. Let's please give them a warm welcome and round of applause. Thank you all.
Thanks, Matthew. Thank you, Ambassador Chowdhury. Thank you, Bena, Alhendawi. And now I gather we have another. So whom do we now welcome? Oh, we welcome Matthew again.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll use this quick transition to bring up someone from the World Federation. Thank you so much. Thank you all. The World Federation of UNAs, of the United Nations Associations, just to have a very quick intervention before we leave on some of their work. And as Julia is coming up to the stage, let me introduce her quickly. Thank you, Ambassador. So pleasure to have you. Pleasure to have you all with us.
Yes, pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Friendship Ambassadors Foundation, when it is not doing this work, is bringing people together in an intercultural exchange aimed at service or cultural exchange and education in very profound ways. Actually, I think we may have introduced Bena and PepsiCo to Leader of Life because Ilak Diaz made his initial presentation here. As a matter of fact, he made a presentation at Fairleigh Dickinson University before coming here, and then made that presentation. It was my co-chair, I believe Tammy Kesselman, who introduced Leader of Light to PepsiCo. So you never know where any intervention will go, who is listening, and what will happen from it. What the World Federation of United Nations Associations is, to me, is a kind of Friends of the UN, which means any of you can join in any of your home countries. And so we have been working with WFUNA, as they are often called, to create an opportunity for them to charge more young people with being involved in the Friends of the United Nations by coming together under the banner of WFUNA to offer service, to learn, and to grow. And for a few minutes, I'd like Julia to come up and speak about this, but she's also going to conduct a workshop. So I encourage you to go to the back of the room before you leave for a lunch and sign up for the workshop. So let me give her a chance to tell you a little bit more about it. This is, and I'm proud to welcome Julia Deagle from the World Federation of UNAs. Julia?
We also support youth, such as yourselves, through our programs that focus on peace and security, sustainable development, and human rights. In partnership with the Friendship Ambassador Foundation, we have some exciting news to present to you today. We have developed and implemented a program called the WFUNA Globetrotter, which is an educational and travel program that will take you to 5 different areas throughout the world: Ecuador, Cuba, the United States, Romania and Czech Republic, to China, and Ecuador, as I mentioned. What these programs will offer are trainings on the UN and WFUNA, focusing on important policy topics globally and locally, advancing your knowledge on these relevant policy areas. You will have full-day excursions to famous also offer the opportunity to participate in local community projects. So being able to volunteer time to local impact and servicing your skills for service community projects. These programs will be offered throughout various times in 2014, and the U.S. program will also be offered in October of this year. The length and duration of these programs range from 9 days to 21 days, and they are a truly unique opportunity for you to go and explore the world by also educating yourself on what it means to be a global citizen and what it means to help volunteer time for local NGOs and local community support. Now, if you're interested, which I hope you are, and you want to become a WFUNA Globetrotter, we'll be presenting today from 2:05 to 2:45, and we'll have more information on what we have to offer. Thank you very much again for your time. I'm sorry I can't provide more details on this, but again, if you are interested, we will be presenting today. Thank you again on behalf of WFUNA, and thank you to the Friendship Ambassador Foundation. Thank you.
Just to give you information, once again, the workshop will only fit 75 people in that room. Look around, there's a few more people. We hope many more than 75 will be interested in these programs. So I just asked Julia where you might be able to contact her or WFUNA if you can't make it into the room.
Thank you, Patrick. You can go to our website, www.wfuna.org, and on our homepage there will be a link which provides not only flyers for our programs, but also further information regarding the costs, and also the travel dates for next year, or the various times. So thank you again.
I can tell you the Ecuador program is fantastic. We live in homestays with indigenous families. We're working with the Shuar families in central Ecuador. They live in the rainforest right on the equator. This is an amazing project where we're really bringing them into the 21st century with this project. We, of course, began in Romania, another tremendous destination that we are in love with. I traveled personally with President Clinton through the Czech Republic when he was president. I was his presidential representative, and that is another phenomenal destination, and we have been building so many great relations in China. We look forward for you to be there. Please take a listen to these. I think you may want to join WFUNA and FAF there. We have very little time. We wanted to bring up Clavisa to make a few announcements before you leave for lunch, and Oliver Libby from the Resolution Project, our dear partner, who's very, very important to us, has some information to share with you as well. Clavisa and Oliver?